All right. So I set this mini lathe up with centroid. I've got an encoder on there. The encoder is 2,500 lines per revolution or something. It's got some nomenclature like that. The way these encoders work is, well, they send out pulses essentially, and then the centroid machine counts the pulses, and when you're threading, what happens is there's a PID controller that tries to figure out where to put the tool based on the current spindle position, right? So if your thread pitch is 1 millimeter, then the tool needs to move 1 millimeter for every revolution that the spindle turns. And it does that dynamically depending on whatever you set the spindle speed to. So I purchased the Pro license, and I don't know what I did before, but I thought I made a pretty decent thread. I actually cut a thread, and I put my thread gauge on it, and it actually looked like the thread pitch was correct. But I think I must have done something to fool myself into believing that I did it right. So anyway, so I tried everything I could. I mean, I literally tried the same operation, I don't even know how many times. And essentially this thread is cut about like this. And the thread pitch on this is like, you know, it's huge. It's like 3 millimeters or something. It's actually this is probably a 4 millimeter thread pitch. And I looked in the G code. I wanted to make sure that G21 was set so that I was operating on millimeters. I mean, the weird thing was I could cut my part to the right diameter in a regular turning operation, but the threading operation, I got this very consistent but wrong pitch thread. And so after thinking about it for a while, I finally realized what was happening. In the spindle configuration, I entered the line count or the pulse count or whatever it is on the encoder, which is, you know, it's listed as 2,500. But the thing is there's several different ways that you can do quadrature encoding. So you can do single mode, all the way up to quad mode. And what quad mode means essentially is that there's a state table with 16 possible states that the encoder can be in, and for every pulse, for every quote-unquote pulse on the encoder, you actually get 4 units of resolution. So while this is listed as 2,500 units, you know, I forget what the units that they listed are, and that's what I boneheadedly put into the configuration. What I really should have put into the configuration was 10,000, because it's 4 times that amount because of the counting mode that they're using. They're using the highest resolution quadrature counting mode that you can get. So I've set it to 10,000, and everything should work, and I'll go ahead and run the test and see if it looks like my thread counts are anywhere near what they should be. So I just homed the machine. I hope my work offset's in there. Probably isn't. I'll go ahead and load. Oh, it's already loaded. I'll just run cycle start. So it's moving over to the tool change position. It did not prompt me, so it remembered the tool that was in there. So now we're going to approach the part. And again, this isn't going to look right because my previous attempt is on here, but I can cut that off after I confirm that this works. So we're coming in on the part. And that looks much better. So before this thing, you know, with any speed, it was really rocketing across because it was counting. It was thinking that the spindle had turned 1 revolution, but it had actually only turned a quarter revolution, and so it was rushing to catch up with what it thought was many more revolutions than it actually had. So if you're setting up an encoder That's the one thing. The other thing I'll just point out is that my encoder is mounted this way. And so if the encoder was mounted this way, then the direction that the encoder wheel would spin would be positive, and it would count in a positive direction. The encoder mounting this way, with the shaft of the encoder going this way, you have to set the counts to a negative value. It's a little counterintuitive. So you have to actually, in my case, I set the counts to negative 10,000, and that figures out the right direction. And what you'll see here, what you'll see in centroid is it'll throw a spindle speed error or something if the spindle's going in the wrong direction. It's kind of a non-obvious error message, but if you can't get your cycle to start because it's throwing a spindle message, you check to make sure that the encoder is going in the right direction. And the way that you can do that is you have to go into the setup mode and you have to enter a password for, I think it's 137 is the default password. And you can go into the PID settings and it'll show you the position. And so you can rotate the spindle with your hand and see the encoder counts update and whether it's a positive or a negative number. And then there's another screen in the setup that'll show you the absolute position that's recorded by the setup. So anyway, hopefully this solves this solves the problem for somebody else who's getting this weird, this 4 times bigger thread pitch than they really should be getting. Anyway, thanks for watching.